Okay, how's it going, everybody? So, we are going to read some more Lenin today. This is Should We Organize the Revolution? This was published in Period, number 7, February 25th, 1905. So, this is Should We Organize the Revolution? 1905, during the first, Russian uprising. Let's go ahead and take a look here. It happened a long, long time ago, more than a year ago, according to the testimony of the not unknown German Social Democrat Parvis. Quote, fundamental differences had arisen in the Russian party. It had become the primary political task of the party of the proletariat to combat the extremes of centralism, the idea of giving orders to the workers from some obscure Geneva, and the overestimation of the idea of an organization of agitators, of an organization of leaders. Such was the deep, firm, and unshakable conviction of the Menshevik Parvis, expressed in his weekly German news sheet Aus der Weltpolitik for November 30th, 1903. It was pointed out at the same time to the estimable Parvis, see Lenin's letter to the editors of Iskra, December 1903, that he was the victim of a piece of scandalmongering, that what he took for fundamental differences were at bottom mere squabbles, and that the shift in the new Iskra's ideas, which was becoming noticeable, was a shift towards opportunism. Parvis fell silent, but his ideas on overestimating the importance of an organization of leaders were taken up and worked to death by the new Iskras. 14 months went by. The disruptive work of the Mensheviks within the party and the opportunist nature of their propaganda became perfectly clear. January 9th, 1905, fully revealed the vast reserve of revolutionary energy possessed by the proletariat, as well as the utter inadequacy of social democratic organization. Parvis came to his senses. He wrote an article in Iskra, number 85, which, in fact, was a volte-face from the new ideas of the opportunist new Iskra to the ideas of the revolutionary old Iskra. Quote, there was a hero, end quote, Parvis exclaims, referring to Gapon. Quote, but no political leader, no program of action, no organization. The lack of organization produced tragic results. The masses were disunited. Everything is without plan. There is no coalescing center, no guiding program of action. The movement has declined for lack of a coalescing and guiding organization, end quote. And Parvis proposes the slogan, which we suggested in issue number 6 of Period, quote, organize the revolution, end quote. The lessons of the revolution have convinced Parvis that, quote, under present political conditions, we cannot organize the hundreds of thousands, end quote. The reference is to the masses ready for revolt. Quote, but, he says, repeating with good reason, an idea expressed long ago in what is to be done. Quote, we can create an organization that would serve as a combining ferment, and at the moment of revolution, rally the hundreds of thousands to its side. We must organize workers' circles, which shall have a clearly defined task, namely to prepare the masses for the uprising, to rally them to our side at the time of the uprising, and to launch the uprising when the slogan is issued. At last, end quote. At last, we exclaimed with relief when we came across these old truths buried amid the rubbish of the new Iskra. At last, the revolutionary instinct of a functionary of the proletarian party has prevailed, if only temporarily, over Raboshide yellow opportunism. At last we hear the voice of a social democrat who does not cringe before the revolution's rearguard, but fearlessly points to the need for supporting the van of the revolution. The new Iskras, of course, could not agree with Parvis. Quote, we do not share all the views expressed by Comrade Parvis, end quote, says the editor's note. We should say not. Catch them sharing views which hit out at all the opportunist nonsense they have been spewing for the last 18 months. Quote, organize the revolution, end quote. But have we not our wise comrade Martynov, who knows that a revolution is caused by a complete change in social relations, that a revolution cannot be timed? Martynov will point out to Parvis his mistake and prove that even if the latter had in mind the organization of the vanguard of the revolution, it is nevertheless a, quote, narrow and noxious Jacobin idea. Besides, our wise Martynov has a Triapitchkin on a string in the shape of Martov, who is capable of rendering his teacher more profound and who can well substitute the slogan, quote, unleash the revolution, end quote, for the slogan, quote, organize the revolution, end quote. Yes, dear reader, this is the slogan we are given in Iskra's leading article. These days, apparently, it is enough to unleash one's tongue for a free chatter process, or for the process of chatter, in order to be able to write leading articles. The opportunists invariably require slogans that, on closer scrutiny, are found to be nothing but high-sounding phrases, nothing but decadent word jugglery. Organize and again organize. Parvis urges for all the world, as if he had turned Bolshevik. He does not understand, poor fellow, that organization is a process, Iskra number 85, as well as the previous numbers of the new Iskra, particularly the magnificent feuilletons of the magnificent Rosa. He does not know, poor devil, that according to the whole spirit of dialectical materialism, tactics are as much a process as organization is. Like a conspirator, he runs about with his organization as plan. Like a utopian, he imagines that one can simply up and organize the thing offhand at some, God forbid, second or third Congress. The Jacobin pillars of Hercules, this Parvis talks himself up to launch the uprising when the slogan is sued. Imagine that. It is even worse than the idea of timing, the uprising which has been exploded by our redoubtable Martynov. Really, Parvis ought to take a lesson or two from Martynov. He should read Iskra, number 62. The leading article will tell him of the harmful utopian ideas about preparing the insurrection, which were spread so prematurely in our party in 1902 and 1904. He should read Axelrod's foreword to, quote, a worker's pamphlet, to learn what a deep-seated harmful canker, downright destructive to the party, social democracy is threatened with on the part of the people who pin all their hopes on spontaneous revolts of the most backwards, least class-conscious, and positively uncivilized elements of the masses. Parvis admits that it is impossible at present to organize the hundreds of thousands. He considers it our primary task to, quote, create an organization that would serve as a combining ferment, end quote. How can the new Iskras help squirming when such things appear in the columns of their paper? Obviously, an organization that will serve as a combining ferment is simply an organization of professional revolutionaries, at the mere mention of which our new Iskras go off into a swoon. We are grateful indeed to Iskra for its leading article, which it has printed alongside Parvis's. How marked is the contrast between this empty, muddled phrasemongering of the tail ender and the clear, distinct, forthright, and bold revolutionary slogans of the old Iskra. Is it not sheer bombast to say that, quote, the policy of confidence is quitting the stage never again to fool Russia or Europe, end quote. As a matter of fact, any issue of a European bourgeois newspaper shows that this fooling is still being carried on with success. Quote, moderate Russian liberalism has been dealt its death blow, end quote. It is childish political naivete to believe liberalism dead when it is merely trying to be politic and to lie low. Liberalism is very much alive. It has taken on a new lease of life. Indeed, it is now on the threshold of power. The reason it is lying low is that it wants to make its bid for power at the right moment, with the greatest certainty of success and the least risk. For this reason, it is so assiduously making up to the working class. One must be hopelessly short-sighted to take this flirtation, 100 times more dangerous for being practiced at the moment, seriously, and to declare boastfully that, quote, the proletariat, the liberator of the country, the proletariat, the vanguard of the whole nation, has now had its heroic role recognized by the public opinion of the progressive elements of the liberal democrat bourgeoisie, end quote. Gentlemen of the new Iskra, when will you understand that the liberal bourgeoisie acknowledges the proletariat as hero for the very reason that this proletariat, though dealing a blow at Tsarism, is not yet strong enough, not yet social democratic enough to win for itself the kind of freedom it wants? When will you understand that what we must do is not to boast about the present bowing and scraping of the liberals, but to warn the proletariat against it, and to show up what lies behind it? You do not see that? Then look at what the industrialists, merchants, and stockbrokers are saying about the necessity of a constitution. How plainly these declarations speak of the death of moderate liberalism. The liberal windbags prate about the heroism of the proletarians, while the industrialists weightily and imperiously demand a skimpy constitution. That is how matters stand, dear leaders. Leaders is in quotes right here. But nothing can compare with Iskra's argument on the question of arming. Quote, the work of arming the proletariat and systematically building up the organization which shall guarantee that the people's attack upon the government shall take place simultaneously everywhere is declared to be a, quote, technical job. And we, of course, are above such trivialities as technique. We go to the root of things. Quote, important though they are, the technical jobs, it is not upon them that our efforts should be concentrated in preparing the masses for revolt. All the efforts of the underground organizations will count for nothing if they fail to arm the people with the one indispensable weapon, a sense of the burning necessity to attack the autocracy and to arm for the purpose. It is on propaganda among the masses to arm themselves for the purpose of revolt that we should concentrate our efforts." End quote. The italics in the last two passages are the author's. This is indeed a profound way of stating the issue, nothing like the narrow-minded Parvis, who almost reached the point of Jacobinism. The crux of the matter is not in the work of arming or in the systematic building up of the organization, but in arming the people with a sense of burning necessity to arm. What a painful feeling of shame for social democracy comes upon one at the sight of these Philistine platitudes, which seek to drag our movement back. To arm the people with a sense of the burning necessity to arm is the constant, common duty of social democrats, always and everywhere. It can be applied equally to Japan as it can England, to Germany as it can to Italy. Wherever there are oppressed classes struggling against exploitation, the doctrine of the socialists, from the very start, in the first place, arms them with a sense of the burning necessity to arm, and this necessity is present when the labor movement begins. Social democracy has only to make this burning necessity a conscious one, to bring home to those who are conscious of it the need for organization and planned action, the need for considering the whole political situation. Dear editor of Iskra, please drop it at any meeting of German workers and see the hatred towards, let us say, the police that burns in the faces there. What bitter sarcasms and clenched fists you will hear and see there. What is the force that holds in check this burning necessity to mete out summary justice to the bourgeoisie and its servitors, who ill use the people? It is the force of organization and discipline, the force of consciousness, the consciousness that individual acts of assassination are absurd, that the hour for the serious revolutionary struggle of the people has not yet been struck, that the political situation is not ripe for it. That is why under such circumstances no socialist will ever bid the people arm, but he will always make it his duty. Otherwise, he is no socialist, but a mere windbag, to arm them with a sense of the burning necessity to arm and attack the enemy. However, the conditions in Russia today differ from these everyday conditions of work. Therefore, the revolutionary social democrats, who until now have never issued a call to arms, but have always equipped the workers with a sense of the burning necessity to arm. Therefore, the revolutionary social democrats, following the initiative of the revolutionary workers, have now issued the slogan, "To arms." At such a time, when the slogan has at last been issued, Iskra delivers itself of the statement that the main thing is not arming, but the burning necessity to arm. What is this but sterile intellectualist logic, chopping and hopeless triapicianism? Are not these people dragging the party back away from the pressing task of the revolutionary vanguard to the contemplation of the proletariat's posterior? This unbelievable vulgarization of our task is due not to the individual qualities of one or other triapician, but to the entire position, which has so inimitably formulated in the catchwords, organization as process and tactics as process. Such a position in itself necessarily condemns a man to fear all definite slogans, to shy at all plans, to back away from bold revolutionary initiative, to philosophize and chew the cud, to be in fear and running too far ahead. And this is at a time when we social democrats are obviously lagging behind the proletariat in revolutionary activity. Truly the dead are clutching at the living. The dead theories of Raboshai Diallo lie like a dead hand upon the new Iskra too. Let us consider Iskra's arguments regarding, quote, the politically leading role of a social democracy as the vanguard of the class destined to emancipate the nation, end quote. Quote, we can neither attain that role, end quote, we are told, quote, nor formally establish our title to it, even if we take over full control of the technical organization and conduct of the uprising, end quote. Think of it. We cannot attain the role of vanguard even if we succeed in taking full control of the conduct of the uprising. And these people presume to speak of vanguard. They fear history will impose upon them the leading role in the democratic revolution. And they are terrified at the thought of having, quote, to conduct the uprising, end quote. The thought lurks at the back of their minds. Only they do not yet dare to voice it outright in the columns of Iskra, that the social democratic organization must not conduct the uprising, that it must not strive to take full control over the revolutionary transition to the democratic republic. They sentence this incorrigible Girondist of socialism, monstrous Jacobism. They do not understand that the harder we strive to take full control of the conduct of the uprising, the greater will our share in the other undertaking be. and that the greater the share is, the less will the influence of the anti-proletarian or non-proletarian Democrats be. They are determined to be at the tail end. They have even invented a philosophy of their own to prove that the tail end is the right place for them. Martynov has actually begun to expound this philosophy, and tomorrow, no doubt, he will do the eyes in the columns of Iskra. Let us try to follow the argument step by step. Quote, the class-conscious proletariat, governed by the logic of the spontaneous process of historical development, will utilize for its own purpose all the elements of organization, all the elements of ferment, which the eve of the revolution creates, end quote. Fine, but to utilize all elements means to assume full leadership. Iskra defeats its own purpose, and realizing this, hastens to add, quote, wholly undismayed by the fact that all these elements rob it of a share in the technical leadership of the revolution itself, and thus involuntarily help to carry our demands to the most backward sections of the masses, end quote. Can you make anything of this, dear reader? To utilize all elements, undismayed by the fact that they rob us of a share in the leadership. But hold on, gentlemen, if we really utilize all elements, if it is really our demands that are adopted by those we utilize, then they do not rob us of leadership, but accept our leadership. If, on the other hand, all these elements really rob us of the leadership, and of course not only technical leadership, because to separate the technical side of a revolution from its political side is sheer nonsense, then it is not we who utilize them, but they us. We should be only too glad, this is in quotes, quote, we should be only too glad if, following the priest who popularized among the masses our demand for the separation of the church from the state, if, following the monarchist workers' society which arranged the popular procession to the Winter Palace, the Russian Revolution would find itself the richer by a general, who would be the first to lead the masses in the last fight against the Tsar's troops, or by a government official who would be the first to proclaim the formal overthrow of the rule of the Tsars. Yes, we too should be glad of it. But we should not want a feeling of joy over pleasant prospects to overshadow our sense of logic. What is meant by the Russian Revolution finding itself the richer by a priest or a general? What is meant is that the priest or the general will become an adherent or leader of the revolution. These tyros may be fully or not quite fully conscious adherents of the revolution. In the latter event, which is the more probable with tyros, we must deplore, not welcome, the lack of consciousness, and do our utmost to cure and fill this lack. As long as we leave this undone, as long as the masses follow a leader who is lacking in consciousness, we have to admit that it is not the social democrats who utilize these elements, but vice versa. Yesterday's priest, general, or government official who becomes an adherent of the revolution may be a prejudice-ridden bourgeois democrat, and insofar as the workers will follow him, the bourgeois democrats will be, quote, utilizing the workers. Is this clear to you, gentlemen of the new Iskra? If it is, then why do you fear the assumption of leadership by the fully conscious, that is, social democratic adherents of the revolution? Why do you fear lest a social democratic officer, I purposely select an analogous example, a member of the social democratic organization, assume, completely take over the functions and tasks of your hypothetical general at the initiative and on the instructions of that organization? To return to Parvis, he concludes his excellent article with the excellent advice to get rid of the disorganizers by, quote, throwing them overboard, end quote. The get rid of the disorganizers is, as the items in our party news column show, the most impassioned and emphatic slogan of the majority of the Russian Social Democrats. Precisely, Comrade Parvis, they must be, quote, thrown overboard, end quote, in the most ruthless fashion. And the throwing must start with those heroes of the social democratic press who have been sanctioning disruption by their organization as process and organization as tendency theories. The thing is not merely to talk of it, but to do it. We must convene immediately a congress of all party workers who wish to organize the party. We must not confine ourselves to persuasion and to appeals, but must put a direct and inexorable ultimatum to all who hesitate, to all who waver, vacillate, and doubt. Quote, make your choice from the first issue, quote, make your choice, end quote. From the first issue of our newspaper, we have sounded that ultimatum on behalf of the editorial board of Buryad. I'm not too sure how to say this. It's Buryad, but with a V at the beginning. On behalf of the mass of Russian party workers who have been driven to intense exasperation by the disorganizers. Make haste, then, and throw them overboard, comrades. Let us settle down to the work of organization with a hearty goodwill. Better 100 revolutionary social democrats who have accepted organization as planned than 1,000 intellectuals of the Tryapichin tribe who prattle about organization as process. Okay. Okay, yeah. I was just reading some. I don't think there's any important notes there, really. Should we organize the revolution by V.I. Lenin? This was published in 1905. So yeah, well, thank y'all for tuning in. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, Medium. All of these are Marxist. Y'all can hit me up there. Y'all have a great day, and